Well, let me welcome you to the conversation segment of the Signature Show. Let me also apologize very quickly that I have this cough. So if it comes in between this conversation, please don't get angry with me. Don't get displeased with me. Now, last week, the world celebrated the World Human Rights Day. In other words, a day set aside to see how our rights are being protected by institutions, by government, in social relations, religious relations, and all that. But outside of that World Human Rights Day celebration, there are other issues that tend to create a human rights, anti-human rights narrative in Nigeria. In the course of this conversation, we'll examine them. I have with me as my guide this afternoon, Tope Fasua. Tope is a friend of the house. Tope is a deep thinker. Tope is a development economist. Tope has gone into the political turf to feel how the Nigerian reasons about politics. Tope, you are welcome to the conversation.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, sir.
Let me shock you a little bit. Well, this conversation is going to hold under the headline, Buhari's enemies.
I hope I'm not one of them.
And I mean every word of that. And I'm going to be taken from the president's own statements and place those statements side by side the actions of some actors in his government. Let me recall that while Buhari was a candidate of the APC in 2015, one of the things he told Nigerians was that he is a Democrat, by which he meant that he would accept debate, he will accept new perspectives, he will accept contrary opinion as a means of synthesizing and taking a position. In other words, he was not going to be intolerant of opposing views as a Democrat. I just mentioned the World Human Rights Day. Just on Thursday, some 60 activists in the United States issued a statement asking the president to release all NSAS protesters who are in detention, to release all journalists and other activists in detention, because detaining them is anti-democratic. The president, in the course of the NSAS protests, made a fundamental democratic statement. He said that the NSAS protesters were exercising a legitimate democratic right. But thereafter, we've seen that exercise of fundamental right in democracy has earned those protesters court cases. Is it not anti the president, therefore, that having said that these people are legitimately protesting, the same persons are now being prosecuted by the system? And therefore, allow me now to be specific, is the Minister of Justice, under whose purview and responsibility these people are being prosecuted, is he not an enemy of Buhari?
Well, yeah, very interesting question. We are talking about politics, we're talking about power play, talking about perspective, we're talking about ego, we're talking about a lot of things that come into the mix. But you may term it that way. People who are working across purposes to the legacy of the president, or what he should have as a legacy. Of course, there'll be things that go on behind the scene that we may not be aware of, because why would the president say something in a certain way, but the guys working directly with him move in a different direction, in the direct opposite manner, and so on. Or maybe what the president said was just maybe political, maneuvers, just to sound good and to sound modern and to sound as if he's on the side of the people at that moment, whereas at heart he actually didn't mean it. That the NSAS protesters were doing something legitimate. Also, I know that some of the NSAS protesters are being prosecuted. Some of them, their accounts were frozen, and so on.
A passport seized.
Okay, their passports seized, but there are different kind of protesters too. So there's those people who were the young people who had the peaceful protests, for a couple of weeks, and said they didn't mean any trouble. They just wanted attention, to bring attention to some of the grievances that they had. Those ones are on one side. If you want to prosecute those people, you had better have your acts together and your facts right, And I think those are the ones that the group in the United States would, speak on behalf of. I mean, there's this other set of people who were the looters, the arsonists. Some of them committed murders, rape in a few instances, and so on. Who a lot of them were taken. And then some are still being taken. In fact, before coming here, I was reading the news about 4 of them that were caught in Kaduna after they had performed this arson and all of those things. Burnt places down in Lagos, they ran to Kaduna. You could see them, even some of them were armed. If those ones were being prosecuted, I don't think any right-thinking Nigerians will say the government is doing wrong. The police is just doing its work. However, we also need to go back to the beginning to say, is it then going to be a class affair such that if the quote-unquote posh, enlightened protester who was at the bottom of the NSAS protest, if they're prosecuted or called to question at all, that is bad. But if these other people who were, some of them hungry, deprived, depraved, locked out of society, and in a moment of madness decided to express themselves because everybody was going mad, are we saying they deserve anything they get from the police and from the government? But these other people are untouchable. No, I think on the matter of equity, that won't wash. Now, I would want anyone who burns a building, this is a lovely building here, if you get mad at any point in time and you touch this place, you have a problem. I have a problem with you. Because again, our aspiration in this country should not go through the route of destruction of value. Because again, like we were discussing before this interview, Nigeria probably has very little or nothing. Let's not get carried away. I mean, you come to some areas in Abuja, you see very lovely places. These things are taken for granted elsewhere. They put up some of this building in a couple of weeks elsewhere. So you shouldn't go through the route of destroying value, because we should rather be creating value. So I wouldn't support people who are arsonists or destructive people, looters, people who damaged banks and brought out old ATMs and looted the money in there, people who looted shopping malls and some of them defecated in the place when they were living in Sulere and Co. People who destroyed, traffic lights in wanton manner. I wouldn't. So they need to be prosecuted. So these other guys then becomes, okay, what charge do you have against these people? Maybe, if you like, maybe violation of curfew. You say, oh, you declared curfew, they did not go, and all of that. But you cannot prosecute them just for having a protest, because it's a fundamental human right to be able to protest and say, we're not happy with so and so and so that's going on, and we need to be heard. However, please also We then move to the level of investigation and forensics, and say that every time such a protest happens, a number of interests begin to layer on it. Okay, and I did one when the protests were going on. That look, you need to be able to know when to bank your gains sometimes. Okay, if we say, if the government says, oh, come and talk to us, come and talk to us, don't let that suspicion go on for too long, as if we go to meet them, they will bribe us, so we can't give them any leader. Go and, because you want to be part of a new creation, for example, a new Nigerian police. And in order to be that, you need to be in the labor room when the baby is being born. So, for example, now the government is talking about SWAT, but the youth actually did say that they didn't want SWAT. The name, well, from my perspective, I think they're talking about the name being negative. Moving from special anti-robbery squad to special weapons and tactics, it's negative. You still have an anti-kidnapping, you have an anti-cultist, you have So why do you have to define their role in such a negative manner? Why I've advocated for something like a police tactical service. Simple. Police tactical service. It doesn't stop them from carrying arms, but it reminds them that they are service providers for the people. And so the youth should have been there in the labor room, in the place where the new engagement is being devised, to say, okay, this is how we want, this is a uniform we want you to invest in for this police. This is the kind of training that you have. This is how they should look. Their cars should be bulletproof. They should wear body cameras. And so they should record on a real-time basis every time they're engaging the public. This is how they should talk to the people. These are the, mitigants available to the common man at any given time, so that they are not harassed by the police. These are the phone numbers they could call. This is how we want them. So there's a lot. So in doing what the youth did through NSAS, they inserted themselves into the policy-making sphere. Okay, that's what they did. Now, when you want to do that, you must understand that it's a long-term engagement. It's not what it's not about noise. It's not. You make the noise, you get the attention, then you come into the policy-making sphere. And it does, look, the whole idea that anybody that interacts with government is a traitor or a sellout is something that needs to be considered as well. Because again, I want the youth to see themselves as leaders. I personally, in every engagement, I see, look, I don't care where Buhari is today, right now. That's the truth. Maybe he's in his house, maybe he's in the villa, maybe he went to his village, maybe he's abroad. I really don't care. But in my interaction with society, I already have it in my head that, look, I'm a leader, not because I contested for a president or whatever. That's even the reason I contested in the first place. I'm a leader. And there's nothing in this society within, my rights that I cannot engage with and proffer solutions and proffer my opinions to. So they have inserted themselves into the policy-making sphere. Now the ball is in their court. Of course, it would have been great for them to also get involved in politics. That's the young people. I'm not sure they've quite got their act together in that regards, or maybe they don't know what to do next, and so on. Yeah.
Tope, don't forget that this conversation is under the headline, Buhari's enemies. In prosecuting the NSAS initiators, protagonists, you've spoken about the criminals. There's no protecting the criminal. Why I raised whether the Minister of Justice was the president's enemy is if the president says that the NSAS protest had a genuine cause and that they were in fact responding to some of their demands because they are genuine, why would some of those very people, the masterminds, the genuine masterminds of that protest, why should their passports be seized? Because the hoodlums who burn down buildings don't have international passports, I can tell you that. The hoodlums who invade malls and steal things do not have bank accounts, if I may say so. And it's very unlikely that they have a bank account that could be seized or international passport that can also be, a bank account that can be frozen or international passport seized. I'm talking about those who have a reason, who think that they have a reason, organize themselves, they have an understanding of their country and the need to step in. Those are the mastermind, the thinkers of the protest. Is it necessary for them to be prosecuted if the president says they have a legitimate reason?
Absolutely no reason. No reason. That's what I'm saying. I did mention that.
Okay, but I just don't want you to, because I want to give you another enemy.
Okay, fine.
Thank you.
So there's no reason. Protest is legitimate. It's a right of association. The International Charter for Human Rights actually has a couple of, sections that mention the need for people to be able to voice out and say, this is our problem. You don't even have to, it doesn't even say you need to go and get authority from the local police station before you can come and express yourself. For example, now there are people protesting in the north about insecurity. They have every right. No policeman should say, go and meet the DPO before you can come out and say, look, your child was kidnapped yesterday or was killed on the streets, So on that basis, clearly the government doesn't have a right to prosecute them. However, like I said, I don't stop in one area. I always push it and push the thinking, push the envelope and say there are instances where compromises may have happened, even those whose accounts have been frozen. My only quarrel is that the account being frozen, I hear, they say CBN said they should, CBN is prosecuting. I'm of the opinion CBN has no business freezing people's accounts. However, I know that the EFCC, the NFIU, okay, if, for example, you are taking money from drugs lords, for example, the NFIU, the CBN, the EFCC, and the DSS, that's their remit. And those are the ones that will go to court and obtain court orders. They may now go to CBN and say, hey, now, since you supervise all these banks, we want to block all this. In fact, they should be going straight to the local commercial banks to do what they have to do. So it's a very odd development, if you ask me, that CBN has been inserted into that politics. I mean, that's an institution that should never be inserted. And I think it's political. And I think, we should understand that President Buhari is there today. At some point, he will leave. And what would have happened to our institutions? Should ensure it doesn't get damaged.
Oh, I was going to read the CBN matter, but now you've addressed it. Let me go to a statement made by the Chief of Army Staff himself, Lieutenant General Tope. On more than one occasion, he said that the president has provided the military the wherewithal to prosecute the war on insurgency. On more than one occasion. Now, after the unfortunate murder of 43 farmers in Borno State, the Chief of Army Staff said that the insurgency will be with us for the next 20 years.
Because that message.
The president promised Nigerians that he would address insurgency. That was one of the cardinal reasons Nigerians voted him into power. The Chief of Army Staff has borne testimony that the president has made resources available to deliver on his promise. And the Chief of Army Staff says it is a failed mission in the next 20 years. Is it incompetence or is it not an enemy of the president?
Let me confess that I have not actually heard the Chief of Army Staff directly say that, or maybe there are other things he said to mitigate such a disastrous statement. I don't know, in the context in which he said that. However, it's totally unacceptable for the man that's supposed to be on the street, because again, it's like giving a blank check to terrorists to say, continue. After all, we know that you're going to be here for the next 20 years. I also remember at some point in the last regime, a few people, prominent people, did say that who were in government, saying that, well, terrorism, including the President, Jonathan, that terrorism, that they still in Afghanistan, is not easy to get rid of. And of course, people roasted him also at that point in time. Ordinarily, let's go back and remember. Let's remember that, up until 2011, 2010, we never believed that Nigeria could be a country that would go into insurgency. In fact, no, let's move back a bit. Up until around 2005, 2006, when the boys in the Niger Delta started the We never believed that Nigerians would take up arms like that. And then we also never believed that there'll be any Nigerian that would decide to go and blow himself up for anything in this country. But 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, we know what has happened in this country, which is coming back. And the same people who are in government now, as at that time, they disparaged the other government and they said, what is Boko Haram? What is Boko Haram? Is it not just a bunch of ragtag people? I still remember very much in those days some of the things we saw on WhatsApp. The Boko Haram people taking pot shots at our soldiers, killing them anyhow. I remember when there was a video which our soldiers were running on the hills, and these boys had the mind. They were even filming our soldiers and laughing. I remember several times, I'm talking of pre-2015, when they would go and loot our armories. And our soldiers would desert armories and run away, and these boys had a field day. In every engagement in Maiduguri, all of those places, they were documenting. Now, these guys are supposed to be ragtag. Our army wasn't documenting. They were documenting. But at that time, there was no pressman that could embed with even our army to see what they were doing. In fact, the closest we got was when people like Arwa Damon, some of these guys in CNN will come here and go to the streets of Maiduguri and interview people and all of that. So it's a war we still don't understand. And of course, the way to solve that war is not really by purchasing ammunition. Nigeria dumped about $500 million with Donald Trump the other time for Tucano aircraft. Recently, I saw somewhere they said, sorry, the Tucanos cannot even be delivered because there's nowhere for them to park. Maybe they need to build airstrips for them or whatever it is, because they're supposed to be very large aircrafts. And when we were purchasing that aircraft, it was meant to be delivered in 2024 or thereabout, and we were paying for it in 2017, 2018, right? We gave them cash. What that meant is that already we had assumed or agreed that that insurgency will continue even into 2024 and beyond. All right, so that's how we write our own testimonial. And one very scary thing is happening even as we speak. I see a scenario where, in recent times, many people, including the Nigeria Governors Forum, have started to describe what's going on simply as an ISWAP thing. Now, love him or hate him, in the last 4 years of Donald Trump, we've seen the emphasis on phenomena like Al-Qaeda and ISIS. Subconsciously, we went through that process. It wasn't just a thing. In the Obama years, it was ISIS in Iraq, ISIS in West Africa, ISIS in northern Maghreb, whatever, and so on. And these guys, sometimes, they were very brutal people. And the way the media reported them was as if they had an hierarchy. And then I remember when they also said that the Boko Haram of Nigeria had connected with ISIS Global, and they created, now they're reporting this as if there's some corporate governance going on in that area. So, you see, it was as if they had some sort of corporate governance going on. And of course, even the press, like Agence France Presse, would always get scoops on these people. They will get videos left for them by Shekau and co, whom the Nigerian army could not tell where they were. And as I'm speaking to you, we've killed Shekau about 5 times or 6 times. And it keeps resurfacing. It keeps resurfacing in this country. So there are so many holes you could pick into the war, into the so-called terrorism war and all of that. But like I said before, for the past 4 years, it became de-emphasized on the global scene. But it seems that Nigeria wants to own it. Now, we don't understand Boko Haram. How much more we are now saying that it is ISWAP? What you do by doing that is you are now immersing yourself into the cauldron of a global, amorphous, indescribable, limitless terrorism war, okay? And, that's what we're doing. And then you're looking at massive budgets. So whoever is saying that is also hiding the monies that will come from such a venture. It's very unfortunate. If we know we have Boko Haram, we have Boko Haram. Let's deal with it. Well, you want to own look, you want to own the stub of whatever is remaining of ISIS, and you claim that it's ISWAP did this, ISWAP did that, ISWAP murdered 40-something people in Maiduguri, ISWAP did this, ISWAP claimed. God help us in this country. Look, we have different problems and all of that, but we also quite, I'm sorry, some of our players are quite evil. Very evil, because this is the kind of thing that we're now booking for ourselves, perhaps decades of trauma, senseless killings. Remember also that this same government, okay, started doing what they call rehabilitation for these people. How do you rehabilitate someone who's so cold-blooded, can slit human? Listen, forget not only this one that just happened recently. In the Jonathan days, I still remember videos when they lined men up by a pit and they were slicing their throat, slicing and pushing. Bring another one, slice his throat, push, slice their throat. They said it was religious. It doesn't seem to be religious, because they kill more of the people than they say. Whether they're killing. People always had a reason to explain. What we didn't have was intelligence. What we didn't have was honesty. What we didn't have was humanity. And we still don't have it. So the Buhari that when Jonathan postponed the election by 2 weeks, I remember they went for the installation of Sanusi, and it was coming out, one white reporter from one of these agencies, NBC I think, abroad, accosted him and said, what do you say about this because of the Boko Haram, the postponement of the election? He said, who is Boko Haram? What is Boko Haram? He should ask himself again, what is Boko Haram? And they should better not add ISWAP to it. We don't want international terrorism in Nigeria. It is not our thing. We cannot handle it. We cannot even undo Boko Haram, not to talk of, we now make Nigeria the headquarters of international terrorism. Where else is anybody hearing about ISIS as we speak? Where else are we hearing about Al-Qaeda? Why does it have to be in Nigeria? It's because of dishonesty. Now, a lot of these big men have made money because, Boko Haram was an avenue to make money. ISWAP is an avenue to make money. These guys have made serious amounts of money. You people there, all these chiefs of the whatever staff, army staff, naval staff, whatever, these guys, they just see it as an avenue to make money, you see, but it's the kind of money that bites you. Because you make the money because, there's a good opportunity to make $1 billion or $2 billion, you make the $1 billion, you don't even know where to spend it. Look at COVID has happened, people dropping dead everywhere. Has it not told us something about life and the futility of some of these adventures that we get involved in? But at the end of the day, so you make the money, but at the end of the day, these insurgencies keep increasing, keeps getting more sophisticated, keeps embarrassing you. So I think it's a good time for us to have a rethink. Please let Boko Haram be it's a Nigerian thing. Let us try and know exactly, except we're saying that, because when you want to deal with the subject of ISWAP, now that's an international terrorism warfare. Okay, then we have to have the correct narratives in terms of how did it happen. I know that, we never even heard about Boko Haram at the level at which we are hearing about it. There used to be a group in Maiduguri, some guy called Mohammed Yusuf, charismatic in his own way, had followers, dropped out of school, got people to drop out of school and follow him, somewhere in Maiduguri there. However, by the time they took out Gaddafi was when, obviously we had sophisticated weapons and bombs making it into Nigeria, so that's the international link. But I would have thought that, we should have had, a handle on that by now. We should have had even with some of the massive kidnappings we've had in the past, you tell me that in this country we have a NASDA there, a space agency there, we have NICOMSAT, we have a satellite or two in it, and then a convoy of 50 Toyota trucks back to back, will move into a place, kidnap 300 girls in the school, move out and no one sees them. And in Dapchi, the same thing. They moved in, they kidnapped 100 children, they moved out. And when the government had said one or two things and whatever the case may be, they moved and dropped them back, less one. Intelligence. And without honesty, there's no intelligence. Without honesty, there's no intelligence. And the moment we are honest with ourselves and we can find our humanity, perhaps we'll get a handle on some of these things going on.
Enemy number 3. Tope, when the president was campaigning as a candidate of the APC, one of the promises he made and which his party endorsed was restructuring this country. The APC as a party has also established a committee to look at that promise. And the Kaduna State Governor, Signaturetv, who was the chairman of that committee, has come out on more than one occasion to tell Nigerians that the committee did its work, recommended devolution of powers, recommended that a maximum of 9 or 7 or 9 items should be left on the exclusive list for the federal government to handle, while the rest will go to the states, with the commensurate resources also moved to the states. He went ahead to say that the committee even addressed the matter of resource control as a means of creating harmony, understanding in the country. 2 weeks ago, he challenged the National Assembly, which is dominated by APC. If the president promised restructuring, if the party that produced the president has done its work and submitted restructuring, why is Ahmed Lawan, Dr. Ahmed Lawan, the Senate President, and Right Honorable Femi Gbadabiamila, the House of Representatives, who are also members of the APC, why are they not taking the next legislative step to implement the promise of the president and the recommendations of their own party? Are they not enemies of Buhari?
Another set of enemies. And I think your interview should put them on their toes as well, because by the time it is aired and they are labeled as enemies, I'm sure they'll get a call from the president and say, we heard that you are my enemy. You know, these politicians, that's the kind of thing that keeps them on their toes. And you are very right, because the president did make a promise. The APC set up the El-Rufai committee to look into it. They are alleged to have, made 1 or 2 recommendations. In fact, let's even roll back a bit to 2014. We had another sovereign, well, maybe it wasn't quite sovereign, some other national conference at which a few agreements were reached. Unfortunately, I hope that one day we will learn the urgency of now. Perhaps Jonathan should have. You know, human beings, and I don't know what happens to people when they get into power, really. Maybe sometimes they think they want to be there forever. I see people fighting over offices, and I wonder, it's just not worth it. Maybe, like we were saying earlier on, perhaps there's a stage of development we haven't quite attained as a people, mentally, to be able to see the need for us to do some certain things. Perhaps Jonathan should have, implemented a few of those things that were agreed and set it in motion, and that lays the precedence, whether or not he was there or not. However, what we saw was he hoped to come back, and at the end of the day, nothing is new. And one of the things, though, that were agreed, not everything was kosher. One of the things that were agreed in 2014, actually part of it was that they needed to create 18 more states, which people would not agree. I don't agree, because that's just 18 more long convoys, 18 more sets of commissioners lumbering all over the place, 18 more state assemblies, fighting themselves over nothing, and all of that, and it doesn't dovetail into development. As we speak right now, a state governor, no state governor can actually lay claim to being on top of what happens in all the local governments in this area. How many can you do physically and possibly humanly possible? So it's right, it's correct that some of these agreements have been reached, but nothing is on ground. Again, it's back to the issue of dishonesty, an intent to deceive, a focus on power by every means at the expense of the people. That's what it is at the end of the day. Because if a party campaigns that when the other government was there, you excoriated them and said you're going to restructure or whatever. Now, it depends on what restructure means to people. Different people have different ideas of restructuring. I have my idea, which I'm going to speak about in a moment. But the government of today has done nothing in that regard. One of my ideas about restructuring is that, restructuring, there's a kind of mild kind of restructuring you can do, and which we have done over time, but which we stopped doing largely since 1999. So you want to talk about structure. There was a time that we had this country under a parliamentary system of government. It was a structure. And then, of course, a coup happened. Unfortunately, this great man, Abaka Tafawa Balewa, was taken out. A few other big men were taken out in this country, including Sardauna, and so on, including Akintola and co. And then, of course, the coups happened. A counter coup happened. Some other people were taken out in this country. We went into a civil war, and then we went into military governance up until 1979. And in 1979, a sovereign conference was held a national conference was held to restructure the country politically by going into the presidential system of government. There's a reason. The reason was that the fear then was, listen, Abaka Tafawa Balewa was taken out because he was a mere MP and people were not listening to him. So people could say, my friend, you're an MP, you're just the leader of your party. So my friend, sit down. I'm also the leader of my party. Okay? Primus inter pares, you're only first among equals. Okay? Right? In fact, there was a story that's told by Patrick Tope of Pius Okigbo. Is it Pius Okigbo? Or one of the Okigbos, the professor, who worked with Abaka Tafawa Balewa. And there was a time Balewa was thinking about establishing a steel plant somewhere in Nigeria. And he had identified a place that had the resources to sustain it. But by the time he brought it to their meeting of all these premiers of the different regions, and he said, we're going to put this steel plant in this way because they have the resources. They told him, my friend, if you want to put a steel plant, you have to put one in each of the regions. And it became a heated argument. And they had an executive session where they excused everybody, including Okigbo. By the time they came back, they had vented. By the time this Okigbo said, they were rounding up the meeting. He went to Tafawa Balewa and said, sir, so what is the position? The man said, you know what? Don't worry. They have had their say. We're going to put it everywhere. He said, but we don't have the resources to put these steel plants everywhere, and not everywhere can sustain it as per resource. The man told him, he said, you know what? We will do what we are going to do. We will do nothing. And that was the end of the story. You could have probably traced that story into Ajaokuta and why it failed. So in 1979, the thinking was, let us find a president whom the entire country will vote for, and by vesting their vote, or the majority will vote for, by vesting their vote in that person, we would understand that this person has a mandate of the entire Nigeria, not the mandate of his local government or
region.
Or his region. That's the thing. However, we have seen the abuse of that. First of all, that same government was taken out in 1983 by this same Mr. Buhari, who is there right now. Okay, was taken out for the same reasons of, oh, there's too much corruption, there's this, there's that, there's that. So anyhow, I'm talking about restructuring. We have always restructured. Pre-1999, we would have scenario, and under the military, there was some sort of restructuring. What are we even talking about? My belief is that restructuring should be about the people. When you're running a company is meant to deliver profit for the shareholders. If by the operational modus operandi of that company, you're not delivering the profit, you have to sit down, whether with the shareholders, and yes, you have to sit down and say, okay, how do we move forward? Is the MD earning too much money? Are you giving too many cars to the directors? Or is the shareholders drawing too much dividend? Or what exactly is the issue? Why we are not being able to grow our reserves? The same way you run a country. So what we're talking about, my own idea of restructuring is a scenario where, you know, every other year or 2 or 3, I think that restructuring should be written into the Nigerian constitution, such that every 3 years or 4 years we sit down and think about, are we delivering for the people, with the focus being on the most vulnerable? Are we training our children in school, or do we have an increasing number of children on the streets? It's unacceptable. On my way down here, even in this area, I saw children, some of them begging as I was driving, just begging for something to eat. But mind you, when law and order breaks down, those ones become cannon fodder. They take you out. You don't want to be near them. I remember even someone told me about what happened in this same area, in this last NSAS, when law and order broke down, and how these children converted into something different. I think you get my point. So my idea of restructuring is something where you build it into the Nigerian constitution to say that is this entity, is this going concern delivering for the people? If it's delivering, is it delivering as optimally as it should? So, you know, over time we've had scenarios where the military toyed. The military were quite distant. Unfortunately, here we are thinking about whether the military was better or the civilians. Of course, there were less offices available under the military. A lot of the offices were occupied by their people. There was a time we ran out of colonels in this country. We grew up in that time. We ran out of colonels to be state governors. They were looking for lieutenant colonel. They ran out of colonels. How much training does a lieutenant colonel have to run a state? And we're talking about states that were double the size of what we have now. Buhari ran the entire northeast region of 6 states now. Borno, Gombe, Adamawa, 6 states. Maybe as a brigadier. You get my point? But as at that time they were a bit more eclectic in terms of their, you know, because from time to time they will wake up and say, okay, you know what, in this year, mind you, budgets were read every the 31st December or 1st of the next year. They will say, okay, going forward, this is the sharing formula between state and this thing. We're going to move this one here, we're going to increase this one, reduce this one, and all of that. Derivation formula, they were toying with it. There was a time it went as low as 2% under Abacha, 3% under Babangida. It was in 1999, around that period, they increased it to 13%. Since then, nothing has happened. 52% to state, 26% to, 52% to federals, 26 and 22 with 2% for, you know, what they call it, yes, all those things, service-wide vote and all of those stuff, you know, has been there since around that. Obasanjo tinkered a bit with it somewhere around 2003, a bit. So what has happened is that politicians have merely entrenched themselves. Everybody is thinking about grabbing territory. The National Assembly has become all about constituency projects and which ministry or department they can lean on in order to extract money from them. This is Christmas coming. You need to know the kind of pressure that some of the MDAs go under from the committees that supervise them.
Let us help the president.
Sorry, sir. Let me just land on this. So restructuring, you know, depends on what you're looking at. But I think that, you know, for example, these guys were not sincere enough to even say, let us get an angle and move the needle. So they're not moving the needle whatsoever on the matter of restructuring. We're still talking about the same number of, you know, the same derivation formula, the same allocation formula, the same number of states. Whether you are shrinking them or you're expanding them, let me know.
The same powers conferred on federal government.
The same powers. Okay, technically speaking, some of them have been, some of the exclusive has been a bit eroded, like power. Why do you know, these laws were made when, as my people say, when the eyes were at the knees. Before the eyes migrated to where it is right now. That's when these laws were made. In those days, generating power was a big deal. Right now, go to America, go to all of these European countries, 15-year-old boys are generating energy. 12 years old are generating light. Is it not science? Can you see the evolution of science between then and now? So you ask yourself, where have we been? It should be a shame. University of Ibadan was formed in 72 years ago. Nigeria cannot manufacture one bulb of light, one bulb, with local listening, with local intelligence. from the ground. And that's where we must get to. And even I challenge our youth on that. Listen, we're not talking about, cosmetic issues, things that look good, let's go and complain. Look, they must begin to see that they are running this country intellectually before even getting in the political this thing. You know what I'm saying? So this restructuring is what it is. We must know where to put it. And let me land by saying that, listen, what is called the federating units, that's where the problem is. So now we're talking about states getting some of the powers listed in the exclusive, okay? Because the states are the federating units. And federalism says that there could be only 2 federating units. Wrong. Many people are saying this thing, have not even read about federalism. I've immersed myself into it, including the history of the United States, including the history of the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, and the shifts over time. I said to people, listen, Nigerian people and so-called intellectuals are still so buried and immersed in O.A. Lawal. That secondary school government textbook that says federalism must be 2 federated. Says who? You have to be able to fashion your own federalism. In fact, if you go and research federalism, you will see, they'll tell you United States federalism as different from Canadian federalism. In Canada, the federating units, which are the regions, they took their powers and left the rest for the state, for the federal. In the United States, the federal took his powers and left the rest for the states. The Federalists, the guys called the Federalists, John Jay, James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, these were great men. Some of these boys were 30-something years old when they signed, the Declaration of Independence and created the new United States of America. 30-something years old. Some were 20-something in that time. You see? So nobody says that if your problem in Nigeria is at the local level, nothing says that the local people should not be part of the federating unit, should not be able to derive power and say this is where we want to go. Sir, our states and our local government as they stand today are artificial creation. Therefore, they cannot be federating units. We're not supposed to be talking of more power for these states. If we really want to be honest and have a sovereign conference, that conference will be done on nationality basis. We then have to define what a nationality is. If there's a group of people in Yoruba land who say, listen, we're not quite the Yoruba people, our language is slightly different. We want to identify ourselves as a nationality. Then you can set a benchmark and say, okay, if you can show that you have more than 50,000 people who support this, then you're a nationality. Nationality. I'm not using the word ethnic. Nationality. We see ourselves as a nationality. In Lagos State now, the Badagry people are not Yoruba people. They are Igbo people. They are not Yoruba people. They are Awori people. We don't understand their language. You cannot subsume them into Yoruba land and say that the Yoruba man is representing them at the conference. And as I said before, our states are artificial creation because they were created from the top. In the United States example that we're copying, which made federalism popular, it was 13 colonies. These colonies were just right at the edge in the eastern United States. You mentioned western United States earlier. It was 13 colonies coming together, Virginia, Delaware, Philadelphia, New York, coming together, okay, to say, listen, we want to sign and be together. And before they acquired the territory of Florida, which came from the south and vast into the north of the United States, before they acquired Illinois, or which one did they acquire from France? Which moved from the south, New Orleans area, into that's how they claimed the entire United States, but there were only 13 colonies. You can see from the ground up. It wasn't United States created first, now dividing the thing and say, you state, okay, you. No. So we have to understand what makes, what confers the right to be a federating unit on a group of people. I would say we go back, if we want to be honest about it. You may go to Adamawa State and find a group of people who are not Fulani, they are not Hausa, they are not, but they are their own. And they have to have a voice. It's when those people now come together, you now say, okay, how do we then share the power? Maybe some of it is going to be shared, and that's what they did in the United States. Some of it will be shared by population. There must be representation by population, and that's how they were able to create the House of Representatives or Congress and then have the Senate. So the House of Representatives is by numbers, but the Senate is by state with equal representation per state. 2 senators per state in the United States. Here we have 3 senators. But the senators, before they became senators, they were landowners. They were aristocrats. I remember when they started in the United States, it was that when you contest for president, the winner becomes the president. The second in the number becomes the vice president. You can see, but they have evolved over time into a kind of winner takes all kind of thing. But look, we are picking. It's just the same. The same thing defines Nigeria, and defines Nigerians, young or old. We want to pick things at the final end of it and run with it. No, you have to understand that sometimes you have to start from the ground up and learn your lessons in order to sustainably be where you are. So I think that should sum my this thing on that.
Tope, let us help the president.
Does he need our help?
To cap this conversation.
Okay.
Because all I've done in this conversation is to show that some actors have been moving divergent, if not outright opposing direction to the president's openly stated positions. I've mentioned the Minister of Justice in respect of the NSAS and the president's own admission that the protests has a measure of legitimacy. I've also mentioned the Chief of Army Staff, who has admitted on his own that the president has provided the resources to redeem his promise to Nigerians that he would fight insurgency and defeat it. I've also now mentioned the National Assembly leadership that seems to be countermanding the president's own position to restructure, even when the party has also submitted a report to restructure. How can the president redeem himself in the face of the works of these enemies?
Well, you know what? I kept repeating the words honesty of purpose, integrity, okay? A presence of mind not to deceive the people. Where this is going to start from is that the president will have to help himself. From where I see it right now, I sort of believe that even the president himself does not care. That's the truth. He doesn't. And I've seen, very disappointingly for me, many instances where I think they did deceive us to come in 2015. A lot of people voted for him then. I did. I went to an army school, secondary school, so I was there in 1983 when Buhari took over. I was there in Ondo State. And I knew what happened in August 1983 and how the state, went into a conflagration on its own. I think I was even lucky, myself and my family, we could have been burnt to death on that day. So when Buhari came in then, I felt, okay, great stuff, and I was there in the Army Comprehensive High School. And I felt, I've always been a Buhari person. However, since 2015 when he came in, it was an anticlimax. And of course, we saw what he did to the economy in 2016. We went into the first recession. Now it's looking like, look, what exactly is going on? We're in another recession within a space of 5 years under the same person. The first one was unnecessary, even if this one was enhanced by COVID. The man came into office and went to sleep for about 7 or 8 months. He didn't appoint ministers. He said they were noisemakers. So that's why I was asking you whether Buhari really wants our help or whether he's ready to help himself. But otherwise, then we could, if he was ready, then we probably will begin to talk about things like communication strategy. Sometimes he refuses to talk to Nigerians, even under the NSAS. He managed to come maybe once and they say, well, I don't know. But you see, what I was say, I don't know why people even try to aspire to be leaders in this country when they are sure that they have no plans for the people. So because it's not a very easy task to run this country. It's an arduous task. It's a thankless job. Truly, it's a death wish. Running this country, Nigeria, it's a death wish. It's a thankless job. It's an arduous task. Many people who say they want it, they're pretenders. They don't even know where to start.
Is the president overwhelmed? Is he overwhelmed?
Absolutely overwhelmed. It was the fact that he also came in with the intent to, he wasn't too straight, he wasn't too kosher about it. That's the truth. Because otherwise, you can't be saying one thing and your ministers are saying different things. And nobody is giving a counter stuff. That means that at the end of the day, we probably should listen to what the ministers are saying because they are the operational people. The president is there. They said his own style of government is he allows people to do anything they want. But that also could be a lack of presence of mind, a kind of weakness, a major weakness, when you allow people to do anything and say anything they want. So maybe the de facto people who are running the country, they are not the president, but maybe they are the ministers or whoever is the power broker around him that can make things happen. You know, maybe they are the ones running stuff. You know, so but if he really wanted to run stuff, first of all, I'll first of all send him and say, it's like some sort of psychotherapy to say, sir, these things, the promises you have made over time, the posturing, look at all these things about fight against corruption. Now Magu is being prosecuted. This Magu, you appointed him. See how long it takes. Even the fact that you are prosecuting him is an indictment on your anti-corruption war itself. Why did it have to get to that point? How many people are in the space? This same minor that is being prosecuted, the same government wanted to bring him back into the service as a deputy director. So it seems like maybe it's true that if you're on the side of the president, he looks away. And I've heard this said many times, even by people who know him, even by some of his sympathizers, that, well, you know, if you're his man, he looks away. You won't catch his hand in it. But that's not enough. That's not what we need in this country. We don't have to catch your hand in the till, but if you kind of enable or provide a soft landing ground for people because they are your men, they are your people and all of that stuff, then in fact, they are probably worse than they are. You know what I'm saying? So, first thing is to say, it was the president straight with us as a people. Did he really, did he really contemplate? Still what happened in 2016? Crude oil prices dropped. The central bank was all over the place trying to stabilize the naira. People were looking for dollar to do their normal transactions. Some people had children abroad. Some people's fathers were ill. They needed to take them to India. The man said, nobody will have money to sell. If you have children abroad, go and withdraw them and bring them back home. If your father is ill, take him to Gogalada Hospital. But at the same time, he got into a presidential jet, flew to London and stayed there for 100 and something days on our bill. At the same time, 2 of his children were graduating from some of the best schools in the UK, who were sponsored by this country. How fair can we be? Leadership is nothing if it's not leadership by example. The people will do exactly as you do as a leader, not what you say. Forget about what you say, it's what you do that they will do. It may be an opportunity lost already for Mr. Buhari. I don't know. I wish him luck. But perhaps the message should be for those who intend to take over from him, to say, can you measure, what exactly do you want to do differently? Because I'm not sure this country will survive two people who will come and probably lead us astray and not do the right thing.
2 Buhari cycles?
I'm not sure. Well, after not this cycle, we may just survive this his own tenure, not cycle. But if we have another deceiver coming after him, I'm not sure we'll survive it.
Well, I wish that we will survive, Tope.
I hope so.
I wish that we survive. Well, in the past 45 minutes or thereabout, this conversation was supposed to just be 30 minutes conversation. I'm supposed to accommodate other contributors to this Buhari's enemies topic for this Sunday. But I think Tope has raised enough issues to occupy the conversation in this country some time to come. Tope, thank you for coming.
You're welcome, sir.
The conversation never ends. My name remains Mwabo Zenjoko. Next Sunday is another date. Good afternoon.